There are 8 candidates vying to replace Roberto Azevedo as the head of the World Trade Organization, the WTO. We've said here on Cresswell's Business we're going to speak to each of them between now and when the final decision is made. There they all are. It'll be done by consensus, apparently. WTO countries' ambassadors will get together and see if they can agree. They don't have a vote. It's a very strange way of doing things. Moldova's candidate and former foreign minister is Tudor Ulianovschi, who joins me now live. Sir, good to have you, Tudor. You've been foreign minister of Moldova. You've been the ambassador in Geneva, which has allowed you to work on WTO issues. But you don't have the experience of trade that the other candidates do. Do you think that'll be a big handicap for you?
Well, good evening, Richard, and thank you for the invitation. I look forward to the conversation. I indeed bring to the table the experience that I had as an ambassador to the WTO. And by the way, in that capacity, I had the opportunity to be also, for the first time, the chairman of the Balance of Payments Committee of the WTO. And particularly, I was involved in negotiations on trade for preparing the Buenos Aires ministerial declaration of WTO, and I was one of the 4 Geneva-based ambassadors that participated at the negotiating the first draft of the ministerial conference, which is the highest level of decision-making within the WTO. That having said, as well as the foreign minister, that adds to the ability to be able to negotiate politically with global leaders, but also with the counterparts in various capitals. So I would focus on the results that I have registered, but also particularly on trade negotiations which I had in Geneva and abroad.
All right. So the issue with the WTO is how to make it relevant again, but not just at the disputes area, but more importantly, in terms of future trade talks. The last major trade round collapsed, lots of incremental ancillary trade deals like facilitation. Do you believe in multilateral trade, or do you see the future as more regional or bilateral?
Well, I am a strong proponent of multilateral trade system, and I'm a strong believer that WTO is absolutely necessary and is more relevant than ever. And particularly, WTO is playing and will be playing a very important role to tackle the negative impacts of COVID-19 on the global financial situation, and also addressing the 18.5 drop of the global merchandise trade, which is going to be registered in the second half of this year. So from that point of view, I do think that WTO, as the multilateral agency, has the capacity, and in my opinion, WTO members have the necessary will. At the same time, I do agree with you that at the moment, we are registering more and more plurilateral discussions, which I think have a positive feedback.
Now, what will you say, assuming you get the job, and assuming, for the purposes of this question, President Trump gets re-elected, what will you say to the USTR when he says, I'm going to pull out, you're a waste of time, the WTO is firmly against, or is weighted against the United States?
Well, every decision in WTO, of course, is taken based on the dialogue and based on the participation within the global trade. I have not seen that kind of initiative yet, and I do believe that the first step would be to engage in a political dialogue and making sure that there is a necessary political will to be able to renegotiate the aspects that have raised concerns, but at the same time to be able to start negotiations and discussions on the issues that are not yet regulated within WTO, because it's always a work in progress. And from that point of view, I have been, as a foreign minister, I have visited Washington several times, and I have dealt in negotiations on bilateral level with both US, China, European Union, and others. And I'm sure that a good political able DG would be able to start political talks and gradually converting them to a constructive decision in Geneva.
I shall be writing that down. Good political able DG. Sir, good luck in your candidacy. We will follow closely, and of course, as this moves forward, I wish you well in your endeavours, sir. Thank you for talking to us tonight. We will, of course, be speaking to all the candidates, or at least those who will agree to talk to us between now and the September the 7th. So